Hi, my name is Chris Howatson, and this is Uncommon.
Uncommon is a production focused on the why of business, media, and marketing. It's made by my team at Neural, a digital agency for challenger brands and talent. To learn more, just visit neural.com. That's NEURALLE.com. My guest this week, Chris Howatson, founder and CEO of Howatson Co and board director at the Comms Council. Chris, have you been able to find that yellow bucket?
The yellow bucket, I assume you're referring to the yellow bucket when I was 17?
Yeah.
Yeah, I meant to ask my parents, actually. I'm sure it's in their garage somewhere in Brisbane.
Okay.
So the yellow bucket, for those who don't know about it, was something I was very fond of. It was given to me as an 18th birthday present when I first joined advertising, and everyone in the agency signed it. Definitely not very PC today to suggest that you go out on your 18th birthday and fill a bucket with the night's drinkings. But at the time, it was a real sign of affection that everyone in the agency were thinking of me on my birthday.
Yeah, right. It's funny because I heard this recently from someone that when you win a premiership cup in the AFL, obviously everyone pours in their drinks and people drink from it and whatnot. So when you a lot of people get to hold it because a client of ours was a sponsor of Melbourne. So they went and held the cup, and he said, it just smelled like beer. Like he said, it was like an overwhelming stench of beer and sweat. Like it was really not that great holding this thing because it really retained the smell of everything.
Oh, the cup itself.
The cup itself. Yeah. Because it's in a change room. They've got Gatorade and deep heat and beer. Apparently it smelled like crap. I just thought with this yellow bucket, if you found it today, would it still retain the scent, the aura of that evening?
Well, it was never used, to be honest. I was so touched by it that it ended up being my rubbish bin next to my desk and sort of saw me through university. So as a rubbish bin rather than the spew bucket it was intended to be.
Yeah,
so
right.
No, this one would just smell like plastic and probably chewing gum, I'd say.
So what's your earliest memory in life?
Bizarrely, I think one of my earliest memories in life was actually as a little kid. My dad was studying his master's, and I remember at night time he would be at his desk doing that. I'm sure there's other early memories, but I remember that for a bit.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's funny. I hadn't thought about that before, and then when you said that was the first memory that came to mind. So maybe that's what it was.
So that memory of him at his desk, was there anything that like you particularly pulled from that? Looking at him, was it just a fascinating thing? Like, why is this man in my life sitting at a desk late at night with a lamp or lights, whatever it may be?
Well, I remember he had a green light. You know those classic green lights of the late 80s, early 90s?
Oh, really? Yeah.
It was 80s, actually. So those almost banker lights. It was a green light. And no, I think as a kid, you don't really ask why. Things just are what they are.
Yeah.
You don't wonder, I think, until a little bit later around why people are doing certain things. You just assume that that's how things are.
Did you pull any like principal lessons from that later in life, indirectly or directly?
I don't think so. Maybe. Have you watched the movie Inside Out?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got kids, and you might have kids too if you watch the movie. Anyway, it's really interesting. I was chatting to my kids about their memories the other day, and they were talking about what their core memories were and what adjacent memories based on that film. And it was really interesting to hear from them what their core memories were around joy and sadness and fear and pain. Yeah, and I just feel like my kids are far more aware of their world than maybe I was at that age. I felt loved and I felt happy, and that seemed to be enough at that point in time.
Yeah,
I think I was probably 3 or 4 at that time, and I can't really remember much else. So
interesting. Yeah, your parents, I think from memory, they one was a teacher.
Yeah, they're both teachers actually.
They're both teachers.
Both were hardworking. So I certainly took that life lesson from them. They were both hard workers. They both sort of went above and beyond, and certainly that work ethic, I think, was coded into me at a young age. So that's certainly something I took from it. Maybe Dad studying subliminally sat there in the background, but until this point, I hadn't really realized that was my first memory.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for you growing up, it seems like I'm always intrigued as to why people think they're going to do what they do later on. I mean, I know that you fell into advertising because you studied behavioral science at Griffith University, but you thought roughly at that time that you were going to do architecture, right?
Yeah, I did.
What was it for you growing up as a kid that you thought this is the thing that I'm going to do with architecture? Like for me, growing up, my dad's a fourth generation printer. I always thought I'd be involved in some way around that, but he was always in my ear around like, you don't want to be a printer. You don't want to be a printer. Classic like WOG background, like you got to be accountant, lawyer, doctor, et cetera, et cetera. Like something other than this. Was there anything like that for you?
Oh, look, I think my parents are really clear on me not to be a teacher. You know, it's a quite a thankless task, and you know, I think I've got a lot of friends who are teachers, and the holidays always seem attractive. You know, when your friends are on holidays and you're not. But I think the holidays misrepresent actually the freedoms that teachers get. I think a lot of us during COVID realised how difficult it was to look after kids, and not just like look after them, but teach them and turn them into outstanding community contributors. So I think as a society, we just don't recognise those enough that help keep society running. You know, this podcast should be on a teacher or a nurse or something, but you know, but you know, so I think they said, you know, don't be a teacher. It's hard work. You don't get paid enough, and increasingly the system, parents are expecting more. So that was certainly not on the cards. I was always, I think as a person, I've always been drawn to energetic situations, other people, pace, goal orientated. And so I always enjoyed anything that was team orientated. You know, I loved team sport. I played rugby, soccer, and cricket for many years. I loved that sort of camaraderie. And so I think probably while I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, I certainly knew how I wanted to feel later in life, and that I wanted it to be with other people. So I think the sort of reasonably individualistic pursuits of being a doctor and sitting in a GP's office. That always struck me actually, going to my local GP, how lonely it must be in that little white room that he sat in all day.
Yeah.
You know, but maybe that's nice. I don't know. But yeah, I didn't really think looking into people's mouths or sitting in a room, sick people visiting me all day was something I wanted to do. I wanted to be in the energy of people and culture, I guess.
There's definitely something to that you hit on. Like there's something about being around people. Does that just signal that you're an extrovert or ambiverted?
Yeah, look, I always knew that from a young age. I always found a greater pleasure in being with other people than being by myself. I think we all need a little bit of time by ourselves. Like my defrag these days is to sort of lie down and watch, you know, an epic drama for an hour, and ideally something in foreign film, so you have to read the subtitles and it sort of turns your brain off a bit. That's about it. That's about all the alone time I need. And then otherwise, I like to be around people. And so I found the recent lockdown really difficult. I was around my family, which was lovely, but I think the movement of new people is, you know, I like performing. I guess I like being out in front of people.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting point. It's something that I struggled to explain to my wife, and that like we were arguing a lot in the last lockdown here in Melbourne, and I'm an extroverted person. She's an introvert. So I was trying to work out what is it that is making me so frustrated. And I think it's that it's not that I get pure energy off engaging with other people. It's the variety of people, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's something to be said about that. I didn't even realize that now. Okay. That's very interesting. I might bring people up to speed on your career because it's quite an interesting one. And there'll be people who are listening who are clearly ad and agency focused, and there'll be people listening who have no idea about you and your background. But in a nutshell, always funny trying to condense someone's life or 10, 20 years, but behavioral science, so commerce, psychology, you basically get this job at Clemenger through a cousin. We can see this career where we go from account director to senior director to essentially a managing partner all the way up at Clemenger. Then we're looking at Proximity, various roles here on boards like the Comms Council that we covered earlier. And then at 2012, you're CEO of one of the youngest CEOs of CHE Proximity. CHE Proximity, for those who don't know, and the industry is probably one of the best. Speaking to some independent agency owners yesterday, would say annoyingly that you really changed the full service digital firm for the late 2010s era, which I would agree with. And you gave them all a run for their money in the process. You know, there's countless awards, articles, etc. People can go find all that on Mumbrella and Adweek. But it was very interesting reading some interviews, and you talk about that roller coaster. And the example was given of the Suncorp account at your very first job, which was quite interesting, and how you sort of fed off that. And obviously now you've transitioned to an independent firm. I guess when you look back at all this period of time in the industry at these holding companies, what are the golden principles of Chris that you've brought over to Howatson Co?
Yeah, sure. Good question. Well, look, I think the defining principle that I brought with me was that an agency is nothing without its people. And that sounds unbelievably cliched, but it's the unbelievable truth. You know, all professional services firms are essentially the same, whether you're a lawyer or someone in advertising. The skill level of people you would expect is at a certain standard. That is just table stakes. If you're in a big firm, you'd imagine that everyone is of good quality. The culture is that sort of unspoken quantity, or sort of hard to quantify value of how people work with each other, how people are treated, the extra mile people go. And I think how you can distinguish yourself in the service industry is to give better service. You know, if a client calls at 4:30, then you're like, oh, awesome, no worries, I'll solve that, and you have that solved by the morning. And we exist at the will and privilege of our clients. And so if an organization isn't entirely client focused, it's going to very quickly crumble in on itself. So the reason I created Howatson Company, and obviously there was an iteration slightly before now, was just this idea that we have to be unbelievably orientated around creating a compelling, motivating, challenging workplace for our people to exist in. And that's how we can be our best. We've all read countless studies to say that, yes, we need money to pay the bills, but actually what most people would do is they would discount pay for career opportunity or for career flexibility or for life flexibility. And all these things are the things that ultimately are the bearers of creativity. And we've been through epic change over the last 2 years, and we all know what we've been through because we've all been through it. But we've changed more about how we work in the last couple of years than we have maybe since the creation of the office. And I think we've got to rethink a lot around what an employee value proposition is. And if we're going into a period where it's a real employees market rather than employers market, you know, we've got a labour shortage, we've got inflation starting to happen. You know, what is it that's going to distinguish your culture from other people? And so for me, I guess you asked the question, what is it about Chris that I brought over, is hard work, ambition, care for each other. And I'll focus on that second word because ambition is something that you wouldn't often hear someone say in Australia, because ambition sounds self-centric and a bit self-serving. Our ambition is really clear. Our ambition is that we want to create work that positively influences people and culture the world over. And what we mean by that is that a couple of things is, we break it down, positively influence people and culture. Look at advertising since its inception. It has been a perpetrator of some of the vices of our society, you know, gender bias, sexual bias, age bias, you know, all of those things have been stereotypes that have ultimately been played out and reinforced by advertising. So how do we help move society forward by having advertising accurately represent the values and drivers of culture? And then, so that's the first bit, positive influence people and culture. And then the world over, you know, we want to do this to make essentially a style of creativity that people recognize globally in the brands that we work on and the fact that we did it. So you asked me before about what was one of my youngest memories were. So my dad working at his desk at nighttime. It was probably at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but as a 3-year-old, it probably felt like nighttime. But you know, to maybe ask you a question, you know, what's the first ad you remember?
That is a great question because I'm a big fan of ads. And if I think about it logically, it's a hard battle between, do you remember I think it was Alka-Seltzer? That's a spicy meatball. It was either that one or the John West ads or Snappy Tom. They all sort of mesh together. And the only reason I remember them is because my grandfather was obsessed with media as a printer, and he recorded like Fawlty Towers, everything on VCR. And I still have all those ads to this day.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, you see, I think ads are a big part of helping us understand the world as kids, helping us understand cultural traits, and a lot of those things exist in our memory structures today. And so I really want to create advertising in all its forms. Could be a website, could be a television ad, could be a banner that my kids see and my kids remember, and other people of their generation see and remember, that when they're our age, looking back on it, they see it. But, even that example there, you said, the spicy meatball, like that's clearly appropriating, Italian culture, right? At a time when, that might have been somewhat of a negative. So how do we create content and brands, and as a consequence of that, shape the culture with which we live in a way that's positively optimistic? And that doesn't mean everything we do has to be smiling and happy, but everything we do has to sort of help move society forward. So that's what ambition is for us.
It's a very interesting point because it covers on a few things around brand image and strategy. But just quickly, I want to reiterate to people who are listening, I think you're so right around the service business being about people. People don't really realize that. And to give them perspective, like 40 to 50% of your overhead is always people. I don't
60,
think
60,
it can go even higher. It depends how much you want to risk. You can go up to 80%. You're sweating when you get to that level. But I have seen and heard of agencies that do that. That is definitely a thing. And I think that service element is definitely true. It's something that I picked up, and I still bring staff, when I hire new staff that work with me on the client side in particular, I often introduce them to one of my first and best bosses in the hospitality industry. Having a Greek background, I worked at a very well-known Greek restaurant called the Press Club, and Angie, who now...
Oh, yes, yeah.
Oh, do you know Angie?
No,
Angie,
I know the Press Club.
You know the Press Club? Okay, so
yeah.
So Angie ran the Press Club. Like, people think about Colin Barris, but Angie made it what it was. And she always had this saying around philotimos, which is in Greek, it's around humility and service. And that to me is like a thing that always sticks out. And I always try and bring staff back to meet her just to see what a character she is. She's got a new restaurant in Melbourne called Epoca, but philotomo is always a thing that exists. And I definitely agree with that. Okay.
That's great. I'm going to proudly steal that one, Jordan. That's great.
What if I told you the way to take your brand to the next level in 2021 is with TikTok ads? A lot of our clients come to us with a problem. They need to take their brand to the next level. They're typically doing 5 to 10K a month, and they need to jump to that 25, 50K per month level. And Instagram and Facebook just isn't what it was. So what's the commonality amongst all this? It is primarily opportunity in a saturated market. And we think that TikTok ads today is the answer. Now, Neural follows a 2-phase process to guide you as a challenger brand on the way to growth. Phase 1 is all about knowing your brand and niche back to front with a focus on breaking even or getting above a break even. Phase 2 is scaling that creative to blow up your sales in the process once we've secured you as the leader in that niche on TikTok. You do this with the right partner, a committed partner like Neural, and you'll build that confidence in an area that has typically been saturated in the past. Is not a silver bullet, and we'd love to chat to you. So book in a consultation with our specialist team. Just go to neural.com/TikTok. That's NEURALLE.com/TikTok, and we'll chat to you from there. We'll come back to the founding of Howatson Co. Let's just touch on brand image strategy. I think reading one of these interviews, I mean, you were talking about how a business is defined by, well, your business, our business is defined by how well we convince brands how they should construct their public image. You've mentioned in previous interviews that has changed dramatically over the last 20 years. I would agree with that, particularly with COVID, and particularly with the internet, as consumers start to see brand truths that brands couldn't really, they can't get away with anymore. Like in the 70s and 80s, you could tell people what your brand was, but people see through a lot of that, and they can also voice it on the internet, which is makes things very, very hard. So I guess thinking about creating ads that people would remember, and you got to touch on things that are just true. How are you educating clients around how to approach this in 2022?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, I think branding can be overcomplicated. Essentially, the best way to think about it is a brand has a set of ideals, and you pay more for those ideals. So you might have heard me talk about this before. It struck me one day just in the aisles of Woolies doing a shop to buy some sugar to make a cake. Sounds like a story. It's true. So on the sugar shelf, if you have a look, you'll have the Woolies home brand, 1 kilogram package in that paper. You know how sugar comes in that paper package and you roll it and there's always sugar spills out? Don't know why they haven't changed the packaging all these years, but they haven't. So that's home brand number 1. And then next to it is the CSR sugar, same packaging, but rather than being white and macro, which is the Woolies brand, it's yellow and it's got a picture of cane sugar on the top of it. And it's CSR and they might have a few more things on it. It's sugar. Sugar is the ultimate commodity, right? There's no difference between those two sugars. They both come from Australia. The only difference was the packaging it came in, and it commanded a 50% price premium. So in terms of the value of the brands, that's it on full display right there, is the ideals of buying into the yellow one with the sugar cane on it, carried a brands, are enough for me to want to spend 50% more. Now, that's a simplistic example. That's classic FMCG. We're at the shelf, you're making a system 1, system 2 style idea or buying decision. I think in the modern era, essentially the availability of information has just allowed us to understand more ideals about a brands that we would have wanted before, but we just our brains filled in the gaps.
Yeah.
So in the old days, I'll make up an example. Let's just say we saw some really cool looking people in a Mercedes convertible, and that was the ad. And that's all I really knew about Mercedes because the internet didn't really exist. Well, I look at that and I said, well, the price shows that it's premium. Those people look premium and beautiful, and I want to live that lifestyle. And that was all it needed. Whereas now we, look at what Volkswagen did with the emissions thing. All we need, a business is totally transparent. So Glassdoor tells us if they treat their employees properly. Investigative journalists tell us if they have dumped some waste in a river. The internet tells us if their customer experience is bad. So all of a sudden, we just are able to assess brands far more holistically as if we would assess a person. So, you could show me a picture of a person and they look gorgeous and lovely and kind, and then they start talking and all of a sudden racial slurs spew out of their mouth. We're just dimensionalizing brands with greater clarity than we ever have before. And so essentially the advice to clients is, or anybody in thinking about managing a brand, is just understand what all of those dimensions are and be authentic to them. And I think that's the key thing, is you can't be something you're not. So if you're KFC, you can't try to be a healthy brand, which is why I think what they've done really well globally around the world, they have an internal mantra, which is pride in the fried. Like, just lean into the fact that you're bad, but it's finger licking good.
Yeah. And it's fun.
And it's fun. And it's not like what Macca's tried to do with the fresh taste menu 10 years ago after Super Size Me, which, go to Macca's to buy a salad. You don't go to Macca's to buy a salad. You go to a salad bar to buy a salad. You go to Macca's to have a burger, chips, and a Coke. And I think this is the authenticity bit, is your brand is what it is. So make that as compelling as possible and round out the sharp corners. And that's kind of it.
And lean into what it is that people come to you for. That goes back to that whole brand truth thing.
Yeah. Own the usage occasion, which is kind of classic marketing 101, and make people feel really good for existing in that usage occasion. Like, take chocolate, one of the most famous commercials of all time, Cadbury Gorilla. For those that haven't seen it, it's a gorilla playing In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins and that incredible 60 seconds intro. And what we see is a gorilla, like a human gorilla. It's sort of before CGI, so it was sort of a feat of filmic mastery in an advertising commercial back then. It was sort of around 2006 and 2007, I think. And what we see is this gorilla emotionally getting into the song like we all have in our cars before playing the air drums, but he plays them on real drums. You know, what that campaign was all about wasn't trying to talk about whether the chocolate was slightly less fatty or whatever, or had less sugar in it and more cocoa. It was just leaning into the idea that when you eat chocolate, you feel joy. And that whole platform of joy was about overcoming the cognitive dissonance that when you eat chocolate, you feel a bit shit and you've let yourself down, 20 minutes on. And it's like, don't worry about that moment. Indulge in the moment, which is why that Phil Collins song is such an apt idea, because when you're in that moment of the drum solo, you are purely in that moment. And so another great example of a brand going, yeah, there's negatives around a brand, but we're going to focus on that moment where our consumer is most engaged with what we offer.
Do you think then, because this brings up the question for me that I had around the job of an agency. I mean, in one of the bios for your launch, you note that your vision is to create a legacy agency brand, fully independent, and reestablishing sort of that multidisciplinary agency that's focused on value. And I guess and it sounds like the way that you're speaking now, that the job of my assumption would be your thoughts on the job of an agency is to counsel them around these sort of factors. Again, so many businesses would come to you and say, we want to do this, but they're trying to maybe plaster over things that are sort of obvious in the market. Like with the KFC, like having pride for being fried, so to speak. What do you think is the job of Howatson Co?
Yeah, well, there's this framework that Millward Brown came up with a number of years ago around how to create brand power. And brand power is essentially a proxy for commercial growth, which is therefore shareholder value. And that just dimensions are meaning, difference, and salience. So if you can have your brands have high meaning, high difference, and high salience, in theory, you should grow faster and better than other brands, and therefore create shareholder value. So meaning is all about the emotional attachment that we have to a brand. Difference is the things that I can point out around why that brand is different. And then salience is the ability for us to remember that brand when we're leaning into a product occasion or a purchase occasion, which is very similar to Byron Sharp's mental and physical availability theory. So the job of an agency, any agency, but if we're talking about mine, the job of Howatson Company is essentially to shift through all the noise and focus on what is going to drive meaning, difference, and salience within your brand. If we're using that framework. There's lots of other frameworks. I just find that's a really simple one to talk to. I think Australian marketers have, all of us as an industry, I think has intellectualized brilliantly over the last decade. I think that's huge thanks to really kind of three areas of improved marketing science. Mark Ritson, I think, is obviously a huge leader in this area. He has, I think, single-handedly fused academia into what was previously like a gut world. Like advertising was about gut instinct. He has been, I think, the flag bearer of empirical evidence in marketing. Has been a critical driver of commercial success and putting marketing into the boardroom. Byron Sharp has given us the toolkit for how we plan for brand growth. And then I guess what we've seen out of the UK, out of the IPA, particularly with Peter Fields and Les Burnett, that's now probably been a decade now of understanding the componentry of brand management that helps us drive growth. So what we've now got, I think, in Australia is an industry of both advertisers and marketers alike who are far more driven by the science and the gut instinct. And I think what that's allowing us to do, and certainly what I've seen the clients that we've got the privilege of working with, is people wanting to pursue those answers rather than gut instinct. So I think what's changed dramatically in the last 10 years is corporate understanding of the role of marketing in driving shareholder value is number one. The importance of the customer and making that the center of the business. And then the absolute importance of your brand and how you manage that brand for most delicately for growth. And so what we're finding now is it's not, people don't come in and say, oh, I showed this to my husband last night, or show this to my kids, or show this to my wife, and they don't like it. Like, I think we've moved past that as an industry now. I think equally, the other side of that coin is you don't have a creative director coming into a room now and saying, oh, this is just great. You've got to buy it because it's great. I think those on both sides of the fence, the clients sort of asking their friends and creatives saying just buy it because it's creative. I think what we're seeing is a washout of that type of gut instinct. And now I think we're still seeing plenty of leap-based decision-making, inductive decision-making But it's because we've been able to distill out all the noise and get down to what we think are the codes of that brand and the opportunities for that brand to go and find market share growth. And then that's what we're doing. So that's, I don't know, that should have been simple. I don't think I explained it very simply, but I think the role of the agency now isn't just to kind of come up with pretty pictures and an idea. The role of an agency now is really help an organization navigate around the customer and manage the brand. And I guess direct that investment with however it goes. So it could be investment into technology. It could be $10 or $20 million into the right MarTech stack. That is something an agency would have never previously advised on. It could be around data and privacy compliance. One of the things that we do for all of our clients and for prospective new clients is we hack their website. We literally benevolently hack their website as if we were a malicious attacker, and we find all the ways that somebody could get confidential data or get customer data or change content on your website for malicious effect. Because to your question before, they are all dimensions of a brand ideal. So if security disappears and that's gone. So I guess what I'm kind of getting to is essentially what good agencies should do now, and certainly what we're aspiring to do, is how we help create positive influence on people and culture inside the organization and outside the organization. So outside the organization is your ad, is your customer experience, is your website. Inside the organization is your data architecture, your technical systems, your people and process and governance. And when those two worlds come together, I guess it was traditionally advertising world and consultancy world. When you bring those two worlds together, all of a sudden you've got a pretty vital business partner that you're wanting to have a long-term relationship with, not someone that you just want to give a brief to and see what pretty pictures come back for your next ad campaign. So it's a fundamental shift in the relationships we're having.
Yeah, it sounds like a big shift. It almost sounds like some of the scope would encompass things that ordinarily would be touched by a consulting agency. Am I wrong in that assessment?
No, that's absolutely what it is. But I think what we're finding is that clients have a bias to action. So they want the strategy. So they want to identify the insight. They want to turn that into a strategy and then turn that into an action plan that can drive the transformation for immediate outcome. And, I think there was some slurs thrown from the advertising side of the fence, the consulting side of the fence, maybe a couple of years ago, that the consultants just write decks and don't actually execute. And that, the converse to that was that agencies just do pitches but don't do any thinking higher up the food chain. I just think that was just new kids in the playground getting to figure out how to work with each other and how to play together. The truth is both do bits of each. There's not that sort of binary cutoff. But yeah, it is the model. It's bringing all those two things together, and then what clients really appreciate is they have less time than ever before, less resources, and so they want someone senior who can help orchestrate all of those functions. And what that means for agency structures is really different, because you can't. You've got to get pretty specialized capabilities, and you've got to scale those capabilities because you don't want any single points of failure. So the commercial structure of agencies now is very different to what it was previously, where you would have, a whole lot of essentially project managers and organizing roles on a retainer. Now what we're doing is it's more like, here's a commitment to us financially, and then I want to tap into all of your senior skill sets, whether it's a technology officer or a data officer or a creative person. And so the fluidity in skill sets is constant, because you don't need all those skill sets all the time. You just need them for a bit. So we've had to change our remuneration models so that, we know what we're being committed to, so we can work out how we can remain profitable and how we can give good rates to clients. But we need a flexibility in that remuneration model so clients can, eat from the entire orchard of the agency, not just sort of snack on one tree.
So what does that look like practically for an agency like yours now? Does that mean that, because you mentioned in one of these interviews that you're trying to imagine a new type of agency where you're trying to balance customer consultancy and the creative element as well, just like what you said before. Does that mean that when a client comes in, that it is directed by a creative director or an account director or a senior manager that leads the account, and then you have a bunch of different specialists essentially that would go in and pry into different areas of the business, and then they culminate under this one individual who leads that? Is that how you view that practically?
Yeah, that's right, Jordan. It's probably far more a resourcing structure like a consultancy. but with the camaraderie of an agency. So we have very senior people who would be equivalent of a partner at a consulting firm. But I guess what we do, which is converse to a partner, is that, if you talk to anyone at a consulting firm, a partner's responsible for some revenue and they've got headcount against that, and they have to figure out how to get that before they, help others. We don't have mini businesses in one business. We are one business and we're all here to do it together. So I think what we've got the capability, the servicing model of consultancy, but with the culture, the drive, and the creativity of an agency.
Yeah, I like it. Sort of sounds like I can imagine like a SEAL Team 6 type cliche scenario.
There's also lots of explosions and loud noises.
Yeah, I can imagine something like that. Let's talk about the foundation of the business. So founded Feb 2021. Obviously, it's a big decision to go out on your own. And particularly to have your name on the door, it's another big decision as well. Many people in the holding company land would argue that it's easier to do well in a holding company than go out independently on your own. A lot of independents would also reiterate that position, but there's also something nice about owning and retaining the value that is created in the agency that you run. What, in hindsight, in the last 6 months, what seemed like the most pivotal moments to you? Maybe it was a client, maybe it was a little win on a deal. I don't know. Was there something in the last 6 months that really had you sweating?
Yeah, look, I think it's good and bad, as there always is. I think for me, independence isn't about anti-holding company. There's roles for both in the market. I worked for a holding company for 20 years. I loved it. I loved working at Clemenger. It was a fantastic place. To do this was, for me, a little bit more around control, and with control comes speed, and I think just some entrepreneurial flexibility. So a couple of really good things that have happened is we've created Howatson Ventures, and essentially what we do is we invest 10% of our profit each year into a startup. We've just invested about 25% of our seed rounds. We just can't mention the company at the moment because they're doing some deals, but we'll announce that in a couple of weeks, which is really good for us. And the reason we're doing that is, there's no greater rate of change than the startup community, and to be an active investor in that allows us to think and act like those smaller businesses as they start to attack the big ones. So that's great. Another great thing is, we said, well, we want to be carbon neutral. So we sized up the cost of being carbon neutral, and then we approved on the spot. This person's great. I want to hire them. Just go and do it. So look, I think you can't have that flexibility in a holding company because it's too many people, and they have to have controls because they're publicly listed and they have to report every 3 months. We don't have to do that. I'm 37. I plan to retire at, say, 67. So I've got 30 years, and I plan to work at Howatson Company for the next 30 years. And so that's my horizon. So for me, even though we don't have to grow each quarter. We don't have to grow each year from a dividend point of view. We've got to grow. We've got to grow in other ways. We've got to become tighter and richer as a team. We've got to become deeper and more valuable to our clients. We've got to do work that changes people and culture positively, whatever. All of those things I've talked about. That's our measure of progress now, rather than, we're up 6% on last quarter. So that can get reported to our Australian holding group. It gets reported to the American holding group. That eventually gets, reported on whatever exchange they're listed on. So that's the good stuff. Freedom, flexibility, long-term horizon. The bad stuff is when your name's in the door, you're massively accountable for it. And, my partner left mid-year, and that was really hard. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to professionally go through. And, and I bought the company off him, and now it's a different name on the door. It's Howatson Company now. And I think that is accountability. You can't just have the good and you can't have the bad. And I think that's what, our original vision of having our names on the door meant, was that, there's no one to hide behind. You can't just go, oh, we're Facebook one day, we're Meta the next day, and kind of move away from all the badness. You kind of have to just own it, and being accountable for it and owning it means that you make changes, you talk to people about it, you're vulnerable, you you share how you feel, and I think that creates in its turn a culture that you talked about at the start that's really important. Like, people are different, and that's driven by culture, and hopefully the good and bad lead to a good outcome. And I think if I come back to the core memory thing you talked about before with Inside Out, we learned in that movie that you need to have sadness to have happiness, and I think I'm a really optimistic person, and I like to kind of avoid the sadness and just focus on the happiness. But it is a truth that like the good times are good because there are bad times.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this year has been. It's been an unbelievable mix of good and bad. And I think the net of that at the end of the year is you really feel like you've achieved something and built something. And, we've got 50 people. If I wanted to be fantastically successful, hopefully we'd have 100 people. But I've just, I've got to go 50 people in 12 months is actually something to be unbelievably proud of. And that's a huge community of people that, all have a connection to each other in some way, Yeah, so that's a very long answer to, what were the goods and the bads of the year.
Yeah, it's funny. The good and the bad. That is the good way of looking at it. It's never too good and never too bad, depending on when you speak to someone at that point in time. But when you always look at it in hindsight, it's evenly balanced. If I look at Dan Monheit from Hard Hat, has become a good mate. Chat to him regularly over WhatsApp. Some of the messages that I have or we have to each other is it can be amazing, like euphoric, and absolutely depressing. Like one recently, I was just like to him, "Does this industry get any better?" I just thought that was hilarious. But then, like, my mood completely switched the following week, and I don't know. Sometimes it's nice to have those outlets, so to speak.
Yeah,
other owners.
Just on that note, quickly, I know Dan quite well too. We kind of chat on occasion, and I think our industry is very competitive on the work, but very compassionate off the work. And
yeah, that's for sure.
That was something I've been very grateful for this year. Unbelievable support from people I've never met before, who have just found my number and reached out to, say good luck. So it's a special industry to be part of.
It is. And he had some funny notes on you. He said to me, have you got any sneaky intel on Chris? He's like, he's so annoying. He's just smart, generous, and a fucking nice guy. And I thought that was absolutely hilarious. He's like, God damn it.
Oh, Dan's a nice guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I guess I'm curious for you giving advice to me as an independent agency owner. Look, I'm not in the same area as you guys are. I mean, for an agency like mine, it's sort of more like our vision or my vision is something like a WME or a CAA, because we sit on creative and talent, or entertainment and talent. So it is, something that you're not directly involved with. But I guess, what advice would you give to an agency owner like myself that seeks to put out a flag somewhere, just like you have? Is there any words of wisdom you can give me?
Yeah, sure. I'm sure other people have said this too. Is know exactly why you're doing it, which will give you your purpose. Because on the days that it's hard, very, very important to come back to why. So actually, another interesting show. Are you watching Swagger at the moment on Apple TV?
No, but I have seen the clip when I log on to Apple TV. What's it about again?
Yeah. It's about, I'm not that into basketball, but it's a story based on a famous basketball player now.
Yeah.
And I really liked the Michael Jordan stuff a couple of years ago, so I thought I'd give this a go. So anyway, quick story. This guy is, a star player, and he just has a bad game, misses all the shots, and he falls in the rankings, and people start trolling him on Twitter. And then he gets to the court because he sort of decides he has to sort of sweat hard and work hard to kind of regain his position, which was the right thing to think about. But he still wasn't doing well at training. His coach said to him, "Well, why are you here? Why are you here?" And we've all heard it before, and it's really easy to give that advice to clients. Like when you manage someone else's brand or talent, in your case, you're very clear to them about what to do. And I think the advice from me in terms of what I realized was you just have to force yourself to do that to yourself. All of that effort you would normally give to someone else, you got to give it to yourself. So you got to sit down, you got to write your why, you're going to write your how, write your what, and then just keep that somewhere safe and come back to it again. And I'm on good days and bads, keep coming back to that and don't drift from it. Because I think when we drift from it, we sort of lose our purpose, lose our focus. And then you can build everything off that. You can build your proposition in the market. You can build your perspective in media. You can build an employee value proposition for people that you want to come and join you. You can build a client proposition. Like, it's just got to come back to that. And it seems so basic. And I know we say that to other people all the time. But I think for me, even if I reflect on if there was anything I'd do differently, there's always things to do differently. But I think we come from CHEP. I was really proud of CHEP. I'm still very proud of CHEP. That's, one of my greatest professional achievements with all the people I worked with there to create that collectively. But we kind of came off that, and I think just thought, we'll just kind of create another version, which essentially we kind of are, but you still got to kind of write it down so you don't drift. I know I keep saying that, but I think any times that were hard this year was just because we'd sort of not lost that vision, but lost clarity of it. It just become a bit blurry, a bit, there was a bit of dirt on the windows. You couldn't see through it. And it's just keeping that in your top pocket metaphorically and always having that there, and it will guide every decision.
Yeah, I agree with that. And sometimes you need to revisit it to make sure that it's current, because you can sometimes read and go, why did I write this? And you might change it, right? Yeah, you might change it. No, that's very, very good advice, I think. All right, let's jump into some rapid fire questions to finish things off.
Sure.
First one for you. What's your morning and evening routine currently look like?
So I always like to exercise in the mornings, and I find that is the basis of health in terms of a good day. So my wife bought a Peloton during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Single best piece of exercise equipment I've ever had. Seems expensive on the ticket. It is so good, and I would recommend everyone get one. So I usually do sort of 30, 45 minutes on the Peloton, and then make the kids' lunches, make the kids' breakfast, and then skedaddle and get into work.
Okay, and evening?
Evening's a little bit fluid. Some nights I'll have work things on. I always really try to be around when my kids go to bed. That's a really important sort of emotional closing moment for me. I think probably back to maybe the original question you asked me around my youngest memory, I always remember my parents being around. Always.
Okay.
Maybe actually, I'm learning about myself. Maybe that's the more formative memory, is that my parents are always there. It didn't really matter what they were doing, they were always there. And I guess that was the benefit of them being teachers, is that they were kind of on slightly different hours. So one of my big priorities is as much as I can be there. So evening routine is hopefully put the kids to bed. They're nearly 10 and 8 now, so it's a bit easier these days. And then it could be work, TV. It's nothing sort of after that.
What's been your best purchase under $200?
Packet of Coles Frankfurts and a bottle of tomato sauce.
Okay. For the kids?
For the kids, and then I realised it was for me too.
Yeah, right.
Everyone likes a Frankfurt.
Oh man, God, I've not had a little Frankfurt in a while. They are delicious, aren't they? Mysterious meat.
They're mysterious meat, but they're very good. The reason I say Coles home brand, because no one else makes them anymore. You can only get the Coles ones.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. What's the casing that they're put in? That sort of, it's red, but I've never actually thought about what it is.
I think the best thing with a Frankfurt is not to ask what's in it.
Ask questions.
Just to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, last question for you. If you could have a billboard anywhere in Sydney, where would it be first of all? And then what would it say?
Yeah, good call. Look, the billboard I can think of is the big billboard on the grain silos, because my old Samsung client used to love having that one.
Yeah.
Unbelievably, 10% of the Australian population passes that billboard every day when it's non-COVID times, which is quite phenomenal. So, that would be the billboard. It's an expensive billboard. It's sort of, depending on the time, somewhere between 250K or 400K a month. So It's certainly an expensive one. What would it say? I don't know. I think I would sort of steal from that artist that puts up those displays all the time that says everything will be all right. Or what's that rainbow one in Richmond as you're coming off the freeway in Melbourne? You know, the rainbow public art installation?
Yeah, I know where it is. I just can't remember
what that says.
What it actually looks like.
it's our time or something. Actually, that's what I'd say. I'd put it on there and say, it's our time, or now is our time. And the thing behind that is just don't wait. People have all these great ideas all the time. Like, just do them, take a risk.
I'd reiterate that. A lot of people come to me still to this day. I'm not old. I'm 31, 32, and still have people that come to me to this day around an idea. And I'm just like, just stop talking about an idea. Just go fucking do it. Like, honestly, I was you 10 years ago. I would do that. And it doesn't amount to much. It's a whole lot of waiting, I think, like that. All right, Chris, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Jordan.
Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Basically, it's LinkedIn. I'm not really on the other socials. I am for checking out how to do ads on them, but I'm on LinkedIn. So Chris Howatson at LinkedIn. Always welcome any chat with anybody.
Beautiful. Chris, we'll link all of that. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be on Uncommon.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode. If you liked it, do subscribe. And of course, like it on YouTube if you're watching as well. We'd really appreciate that. For audio, if you've not already listening on your podcast app, you can search for it on any good app, including Spotify, Pocket Casts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc. For video, if you're not watching, you can search Uncommon Podcast on YouTube. It's the first one that appears every single time. For behind the scenes, do follow us on Instagram and TikTok. It's @uncommon_show. But until next time, thanks for tuning in.